Thank you all for coming today. So pleased with the turnout. I'd like to tell you how special this presentation is to us and to have Marion Brooks come all the way from Chicago to do this presentation for the community of Yachats and beyond. And I'd like to thank the sponsors, and that is all the volunteers, board members, and our executive director with View the Future, all the volunteers with Haitians for Social Justice, and with the Yachats Chamber of Commerce. So raise your hands, you guys. They're all involved. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. I'm going to start this presentation with View the Future's land acknowledgement that's supervised by the Confederated Tribes of the Kuzla Indians and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. This area, now called Yachats, is the homeland of the Ikik villages of the Alsatian-speaking people who live sustainably here for time immemorial. The name comes from the Elsie word yach, which means to go, and chait, which means a place at the end of the trail. Now, Siletz says the Alsatian creation story tells that the Aquinnah, Elsie, Yachik, Tlayusla, and Lower Umpqua people were all people that spoke the same language. But the Cultural Committee of the Kuzla, Umpqua, and Tlayusla Indians says, nope, they all spoke different languages. In the late 1700s to early 1800s, diseases introduced by Euro-Americans killed many of the coastal tribal people, including the Elsie people. Violence, battles, and massacres also became the common experience. Survivors were pressured to sign treaties from 1851 to 55 to live on a shared reservation with many other tribes. The 1.1 million acre Coast Reservation, or Siletz Reservation as some called it, was created on November 9, 1855 by President Franklin Pierce, and indeed intended to become a new homeland. Tribal people throughout Western Oregon were forcibly rounded up, shipped, and marched to this new reservation that was run like a prison camp. Many died on these trails of tears. In 1860, the Kuzla Umpqua people were forcibly marched barefoot from their homeland to the Elsie Sub-Agency, which is now the location of the Yachats, which was under the auspices of the Coast or Siletz Reservation. In 1865 and 1875, the reservation was robbed of about 900,000 acres of its treaty-guaranteed territory. The land and resources were stolen, and treaties were violated by the U.S. government with absolutely no compensation. U.S. genocidal policies allowed for the imposition of horrific treatment at all the reservation prison camps, resulting in many people dying of starvation, exposure, disease, beatings, and depression of spirit. These truths include the documentation of a blind Coos woman, Amanda, forcibly taken from her daughter and marched barefoot 80 miles north of the prison camp, which is now Yachats. Amanda fell numerous times climbing over the basalt at the base of the Cape Perpetua, leaving a significant trail of blood. Despite generations of oppressive policies and cultural genocide, through 9 federally recognized tribes in Oregon, their descendants, through perseverance, are successfully restoring their communities, rebuilding their traditions, and continue to fight for recognition and protection of their rights. The Amanda and Yachik trails are solemn and spiritual trails that remember in perpetuity. Now I am so honored to introduce to you Marion Brooks. So much to say about Marion, so I've been really working on paring it down. Marion Brooks is an award-winning anchor and investigative reporter for NBC5 News in Chicago. Brooks' passion is reporting and storytelling. Her investigative work focuses on social and criminal justice issues, which inspired her to update and add context to the story of Emmett Till, which you'll be seeing the documentary tonight, and that film won a National Emmy Award. In wake of the racial unrest and the murder of George Floyd, Brooks spearheaded NBC5's Race to Chicago initiatives. The multi-platform project included Say the Word, Say the Name, a digital series of first-person accounts of experiences with racism, as well as a reading of names of people who died in racially motivated killings. The initiative also included a series of television stories called the Race in Chicago television specials that earned Brooks and her co-producer national recognition from the National Alliance for Women in Media, also called the Gracie Award. Her series of reports on sex trafficking in Chicago has earned her several awards, including a National Gracie and a regional Edward R. Murrow Award from the Radio, Television, Digital News Association. Her investigative work on sexual violence issues led to the NBC Chicago.com Survivor Project. That project featured brave survivors of sexual violence, sharing what happened to them, but also how they persevered and grew strong enough to own the narrative of their experience. The project was recognized again by the Radio, Television, and Digital News Association, the Regional Edward R. Murrow Award, and the Illinois Broadcasters Association Silver Dome Award. Brooks joined NBC5 in 1998 as a weekend anchor from Atlanta, Georgia, where she also serves as an anchor and reporter. Her career spanned over several regions and market sizes in the country. She covered everything from major natural disasters to politics, crime, courts, to health, consumer issues, and 2 Olympic Games, and much, much more. Brooks has a bachelor's in arts degree in English from Spelman College and is a member of the National Association of Black Journalists. Additionally, among the boards and committees she sits on, Marion Brooks is a board member of the Brooks Foundation, founded by her parents, Margaret and Sam Brooks of Yachats. This foundation is a very essential and worthy organization, very unique in its kind, that helps single parents with immediate needs for their families. Please check out their QR code and website that's at the front desk. Marion is a native of Vancouver, British Columbia, and was raised in Portland, Oregon. Brooke also has 2 beautiful daughters, Brooks and Sydney. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Marion Brooks.
My whole Wow. Okay, I'm done. That's it. She took care of everything for me. First of all, thank you all for coming. What a great crowd. I do want to acknowledge my family. My mom and my dad, Sam and Margaret Brooks, here in the front row, supported me obviously forever. They've been amazing. And I'll go in order here. I have my niece, Sadea, and Emilia, who is my nephew's significant other, and he's out with the baby, who you might hear from time to time. My partner, Kent Matlock, and my wonderful sister / best friend, Simone Brooks. So thank you guys for being here and for always supporting me. I won't take too long because I want you guys to get a chance to see this, and then hopefully some Q&A at the end if you'd like. But just to give you sort of the idea of where the inspiration came from, I'd say in 2020, Wheeler Parker, who you will see in this documentary, is the cousin of Emmett Till. He was actually present when Emmett Till was kidnapped. He basically was at Emmett Till's grave in Chicago saying the only reason people know about Emmett Till today is because of Rich Samuels doing a documentary in 1985. And there's truth to that because for many, many years, Emmett Till's name had sort of fallen out of the consciousness of the country. And there were many reasons why that happened. But I didn't realize that our station had done anything in 1985, and so I was kind of blown away by that. That was the 30th anniversary of the events around his killing. This is the 60th anniversary, so it's pretty poignant right now. In fact, today is the 11th. He went down to Mississippi on the 20th of 1955, and he was kidnapped on the 28th. So we're right around the time, 60 years ago, that all of these events occurred. When I found out about the documentary that had been done in 1985, and I work at the same station, and I had never heard of it, in 2020, I went looking for it. When I found it, I was like, this is amazing. We should be updating this. So that's what we did. That was part 1. And then we actually recreated the trial of the 2 men who were acquitted of killing Emmett Till. And that was a part 2. This is part 3. This is sort of a culmination of all of it. So I hope you enjoy it, but also I hope it, as all difficult history does, sort of help you think a little bit, remember the context. And one of the things I think is most important about history is that obviously, so we don't repeat it, we learn it so we don't repeat it. And we're in a time now that's sort of interesting as far as things happening that people never thought would happen. So with all of that, I hope you enjoy The Lost Story of Emmett Till, Then and Now.
Emmett was considered a leader among his friends.
He was not supposed to go.
He whistled and scared us. It scared us so bad.
This was the location where he heard the screams.
I get near that barn and hear that beating that's on that.
And honestly, no one knows exactly where the body went into the water.
Roy Bryant admitted that he had taken Emmett from his home.
This is the original warrant. To have this space be brought back as close to the way it looked in 55 as possible.
So he knew by testifying he could be killed for this.
He handpicked the jury.
We heard them announce the verdict not guilty.
How long, oh God, will we have a double standard of justice?
And they began to piece together some federal violation.
There was a recommendation that she be indicted, a recommendation by the FBI.
Today is a day that we'll never forget.
I know that his life can't be returned, but I hope that his death will certainly start a movement in these United States.
Emmett Till's death did start a movement. The Lost Story of Emmett Till, Then and Now.
One of the most shameful elements of this nation's past. Stain, a bitter stain on America.
There's no sign to show you you're in Money, Mississippi. It's in LeFlore County. In 1955, it was a town of around 400. Fewer than that live here now. You could easily drive right by what is now the relic of Bryant's grocery and meat market. Great Uncle Mose Wright's home, the site of Till's kidnapping, is gone. Another home sits there now. The church where Mose Wright preached is but walls held together by brush. But the story of the hate that was sown here in this fertile soil of the Mississippi Delta continues to be harvested. A legacy to all who have died under the oppression of slavery and Jim Crow and beyond. A legacy personified in the lynching of Emmett Till.
Emmett was not just mine, he was a universal child. People were really able to see what had happened to a youngster simply because of hate and race discrimination.
I always felt bad because I came back. For surviving, right. I felt guilty about that.
When things bad happen to you, your heart is broken. It's shattered. When you have a broken heart, the heart heals, but it leaves scar tissue.
In August 1955, 14-year-old Emmett Till joined his best friend and cousin Wheeler Parker and his great-uncle Mose Wright on a train from Chicago to visit family in Money, Mississippi. 8 days into his visit, he was kidnapped by J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant. Emmett had whistled at Roy Bryant's wife Carolyn at the store they ran in Money 4 days before.
And man, we could have died. I mean, we couldn't believe it.
In 1955, a black boy whistling at a white woman in Mississippi was a grave error, immediately recognized by his cousins who were there at the time.
It scared us half to death. And we couldn't get out of town fast enough.
We all just made a beeline. Nobody said, let's go, or nothing. We just made a beeline for the car. It was time to go, because this is a death sentence.
When they got home, they told no one. 3 days passed, and they forgot about it.
Of course, we was apprehensive maybe the first day, but after, Thursday passed and Friday passed and nothing happened, we forgot all about it.
I didn't think any more about it.
That is, until early Sunday morning.
I heard about 2:30, I heard them talking.
And I heard the noise, the loud talking.
I heard them talking, so you got two boys from Chicago, and one talked to the fat one that did the talk at the store.
I woke up and saw these two white men standing at the foot of my bed.
And I think Emmett got up and they told him to put his shoes, I think he wanted to put his socks on. Anyway, it was pure hell. I mean, it was horrible.
Our world was turned upside down. It was never the same again.
After kidnapping Emmett Till, it's believed J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant brought him here, to this barn in Drew, Mississippi. Drew is about 30 miles from Money in Sunflower County. That day, an 18-year-old named Willie Reed saw Emmett.
The only first time I ever saw him was when he was on the back of that truck.
In 2004, the FBI brought Willie Reed back to this barn.
This is the area when the FBI showed up. This is
Dentist Jeff Andrews bought the barn in 1992, and he still owns it today.
The FBI brought him here, and he said this was the location where he heard the screams he didn't see.
You see 3 black people on the truck. You see a young one, and then you see 2 old ones, and then you see 2 white men, and they go into that barn.
I saw him motion and say, I was walking down this road right here, and he pointed at the driveway.
But when I get near that barn and hear that beating that's on out there, I know who it was.
If he heard that and he was this close, I'm sure he probably didn't stick around too long. So, because you see how close proximity that is. But, this was the area here and that
So this is the Black Bayou Bridge on the south side of Glendora. So the belief is that the murderers left the barn in Drew with Till wrapped in a tarp, either beaten within an inch of his life or perhaps even dead. But then they brought him back to Glendora, where they obtained the cotton gin fan and then brought him to this bridge and dropped him in the river through the gap in these V-shaped girders right here.
The body of 14-year-old Emmett Till, weighed down by a gin fan, was tossed into the water. It's not clear exactly where Emmett Till's body was thrown or exactly where it was found. But 3 days after his kidnapping, Emmett Till's body was found.
It shouldn't have been found, because they had it properly done to weight it down. But going downstream, it snagged.
Imagine being 17 years old and fishing on a beautiful day like you might do any other time in your life, and noticing 2 knees bobbing out of the Tallahatchie River. That's exactly what happened when Emmett Till's body was discovered. Once Emmett's body was pulled out of the river, Mamie Till made 3 key decisions that cemented her son's legacy as a catalyst for the civil rights movement. First, she ordered his body back to Chicago.
I remember being with her when we stayed up all night waiting on the body. They come in from Mississippi. And when they did come in, she demanded that the body be opened so the world could see what they did to my boy.
Mamie, secondly, ordered her son Emmett's casket remain open. Tens of thousands would file past it at Robert's temple and see.
And when they opened the casket in the funeral home, I remember a piece of his skull fell off, and my photographer went over and reached over and picked it up and put it back on before he shot a picture.
And that picture, Mamie allowing that picture to be taken and then published by Jet Magazine, was her third pivotal decision.
Very gruesome scene, but she was a tough lady.
It was courageous. It was very courageous. Pictures worth 1,000 words.
I mean, the world needed this shock. They needed it. I think it really let us see the ugly monster that race hatred is. It's almost as if it was embodied in his appearance and his physical appearance, because it is a monster.
She changes everything in that moment. She wants the world to see what they've done to my son.
So we're gonna go back to the basement here. And this is the area where they found the warrant at.
In early 2022, a filmmaker found the kidnapping warrant for the arrest of J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant in these files at the LaFleur County Courthouse. Also named on the warrant, Roy Bryant's wife, Carolyn, though she was never arrested. When the FBI investigated in 2004, they asked court officials and law enforcement to look for any documents with information related to the case. The warrant never came up. But current LaFleur County Clerk Elmis Stockstill has longtime experience in the clerk's office and with its files. He had an idea where to look. He could also verify its authenticity.
From my experience as second clerk, and I knew these was original papers. And you see how old and brittle they are? So I knew from the fact that they was original paper. Then I looked at the cause number up here, all these case numbers and everything. All this lined up with previous cases that I've seen from that particular time frame. So I knew that was authentic. So
after Emmett was kidnapped, Mosrite searched for Emmett himself. He also went to see LaFleur County Sheriff George Smith, who then went to see Roy Bryant.
Roy Bryant admitted that he had taken Emmett from his home and let him loose. Taking him from his home was enough to establish kidnapping, and he was arrested.
That was around 2 o'clock on Sunday, August 28th, according to the 2004 FBI report. The next day, according to that same report, J.W. Milam came by the LaFleur County Jail and also admitted to taking Till. It's not used as a jail today, but it was in 1955, and it's where Milam and Bryant waited until their trial in Tallahatchie County. They were here when Emmett Till's body was found, and they were then charged with Emmett Till's murder. The trial was held here in Sumner in Tallahatchie County because Emmett Till's body was found here. The Tallahatchie County Courthouse is still a working courthouse. The room where the trial of J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant was held is still a working courtroom. It was remodeled in the early 1970s, and then in 2015 was intentionally restored to the way it would have looked back in 1955.
So this is important for a number of reasons. I'm not forgetting what happened here, what happened in our town and our community when we think very specifically about this trial and this case.
Benjamin Salisbury now gives tours of the courtroom and hosts talks about the trial. and navigating the past it represents and how to move forward.
Publicly and collectively talking about race and racism, and publicly and collectively being mindful of how that has impacted us.
Mississippi in 1955 was reeling, as was much of the South.
It was a police state. It was like apartheid, no question about that.
The Supreme Court Brown versus Board of Education decision in 1954 begat white citizens' councils bent on preserving segregated life in the South. By November, the councils had 65,000 members in Mississippi and would eventually grow to 208,000 members throughout the South.
The citizens' councils are all around the state. They're different than the Klan in that they are more middle class and upper class. They're very powerful. That's where the action is as far as white opposition to integration.
They were generally referred to as the Ku Klux Klan in coats and ties.
This is Dr. Stephen Whitaker, a Tallahatchie County native. He wrote the first extensive review of the Emmett Till case for his master's thesis in 1963. In it, he points out the primary concern segregationists had with integration was that black men would become romantically involved with white women. In his opening chapter, Sex and Segregation, Whitaker cites Gunnar Myrdal's An American Dilemma.
Sex becomes the principle around which the whole structure of segregation of the Negro is organized. The Southern man on the street responds to any plea for social equality with, "Would you like to have your daughter marry a Negro?"
Ever since Reconstruction, that's been pumped and used to generate fear. The other great fear that they had was that if black people were able to vote, that they would take over and run the counties and run the state.
They saw the desegregation of public schools as a real threat to this way of life, which is the racist euphemism for apartheid, basically. And they saw it as extending from schools to jobs, to stores, to neighborhoods, to voting.
When Emmett Till ventured to Mississippi, only 4% of eligible black voters were registered, and not a single black person was registered to vote in Tallahatchie County, despite 56% of the county being blacks of voting age. So the tension stirred by the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision by the Supreme Court only began to boil by 1955, when the Supreme Court issued its implementation decision, or Brown versus Board of Education 2, which ordered integration with all deliberate speed. Also in 1955, 2 African Americans were lynched for trying to register black people to vote, George Lee and Lamar Smith. Smith was shot to death on the courthouse grounds in Brookhaven 7 days before Emmett boarded his train in Chicago, bound for Mississippi.
White folks in the South were up in arms. Massive resistance is what they called it. A reign of terror is what black folks called it. And this is the environment that Emmett was walking into.
It began September 19, 1955. Every defense attorney in town volunteered to represent Milam and Bryant. According to press reports, a defense fund raised $10,000, and an all-white jury was seated. For his 1963 thesis, Whitaker interviewed them all.
Everyone treated me well. Everyone was very open about it. All the lawyers, both sides, the judge, all the jurors, all gave me interviews.
And what Whitaker learned about the jury pool is eye-opening. The man in charge of picking the list of jurors was the county attorney. The county attorney at the time was John Whitten, one of Milam and Bryant's defense attorneys.
He handpicked the jury. He assured that the list from which the jury was taken had only people that he was pretty certain were totally racist and who would think nothing of killing an African American.
The Tallahatchie County District Attorney was Gerald Chatham. He requested help from the state to take on this case. Attorney and former FBI agent Robert Smith III was appointed as special prosecutor.
I'm very proud that my father took that stand.
Nobody had ever really prosecuted a white person in Mississippi for killing a black person.
And Smith and Chatham had many challenges. The hand-picked jury pool they may not have known about, but they would have known they were not getting help from their own investigator, Tallahatchie Sheriff H.C. Strider. Strider was a staunch segregationist.
We never have any trouble until some of our southern niggas go up north and the NAACP talks to them and they come back home.
Sheriff Strider was also running things in the courtroom, and he demanded segregation, even among the press.
The sheriff, H.C. Strider, declared at the beginning of the trial that there would be no mixing, no race mixing as he called it. So the white journalists were not supposed to interact with the black journalists.
But what Strider didn't know was that not only were white journalists interacting with black journalists, they were all working together to further the investigation of the case, along with the NAACP and the sheriff of Lafleur County, George Smith. It all began with a tip to Dr. T.R.M. Howard.
This guy named Frank Young. He had information that people had witnessed, African Americans had witnessed, Till being brought into an equipment shed in a farm.
Dr. Howard was a well-established doctor and civil rights activist based in the all-black town of Mound Bayou, Mississippi.
And this is the day before the trial. So the trial was scheduled to occur on Monday. This occurred on Sunday. He gets NAACP people together like Medgar Evers, Amzie Moore, ultimately goes to black reporters and he says, look, we have evidence here that this had occurred. We got to go find these witnesses.
Simeon Booker and Moses Newsom were among those reporters.
Our driver was Medgar Evers, who drove us to all those back yard plantations and plains where we were trying to find witnesses back there. We changed clothes and went out wearing something like plantation workers would used to be wearing. We did round up a couple of people who did actually testify in the case.
And that's how people like Willie Reed were discovered and brought into trial.
In the field, I did come across the field where I was being done there.
Willie Reed was just 18 years old.
Then nobody sprayed me to each other. But I mean, I just did the thing because I had to tell the truth because that was the truth.
Willie Reed, Mamie Till, and some members of the black press also stayed at Dr. T.R.M. Howard's compound in Mound Bayou. So his house was here, or it was over there?
No, see where that house
Oh,
is?
where that house
That's
is.
where his house was.
It burned down mysteriously, I guess, right?
You could see
1,000 acres.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was all continuous.
back in there.
Yeah.
Nothing is left of T.R.M. Howard's Mound Bayou home today, but in 1955, it was quite the place. And for those associated with the trial, it was secure.
It was highly secure because Mound Bayou is an all-black town, and Howard had 24-hour security that he'd had for quite some time. He was heavily armed.
I didn't know anything at all about Mound Bayou. I didn't know it was an all-black town. I didn't know that the people in Mound Bayou did not tolerate any invasion of any kind.
Now, the Iowa House was just like you trying to get into the White House because he had his guards out there. You couldn't go through there.
Willie Reed was a surprise witness at the trial. His testimony, a key link in the case.
It won't establish the time and place of the actual murder, but it will connect the defendants with the crime.
He testified to seeing Emmett in the back of a 55 Chevy truck with two black men, including one he knew, Levi Too Tight Collins.
I saw that truck when he went down and passed me, and I saw that young boy, and I saw Too Tight Collins on that car.
Reed testified he saw 4 white men in the cab of the truck, and then to hearing a beating at the barn in Drew and seeing J.W. Milam with a gun.
Now, later on in the morning, did you see Mr. J.W. Milam out there?
Yes, sir.
Where did you see him?
When I passed by, he came out to the well.
And was that J.W. Milam, the man who was sitting over there?
Yes, sir.
Did you see or hear anything as you passed by the barn?
I can hear somebody hollering. And I heard some licks, like somebody was whipping somebody.
And I told him what these people did and what I saw, and I kill that boy.
He actually said he don't think he could live with it. He don't think he could have lived knowing that he heard all that noise and heard that child hollering and crying and don't say anything.
Willie Reed's widow says what he witnessed bothered him his entire life, that he would sometimes have night terrors, and that he always stood by his decision to testify.
One thing that really touches me is that one of the witnesses, 18-year-old Willie Reed, this guy put his life on the line. He came in and had the courage.
Mose Wright famously testified first, standing and pointing out both J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant as the men who took Emmett from his home.
So he knew by testifying he could be killed for this. But he said a man has to do what a man has to do. And he did it. He did something that no other black man had ever done in Mississippi and lived to tell about it.
It was a real climax. I suppose the first time a black has ever pointed to a white person in Mississippi, accusing him of a crime where he could be executed.
The defense's case hinged on disputing the identity of the body found in the Tallahatchie River as actually being that of Emmett Till. Mamie Till testified she saw her son's body and she had no doubt.
Please state to the court and the jury whether you could identify the body there at the funeral home as that of your son, Emmett Till.
I positively identified the body in the casket, and later on when it was removed and placed on a slab as being that of my son, Emmett Lewis Till.
Well, Mamie was terrified to be there in Mississippi. She knew that there was going to be an intensely hostile environment there, and she walked into it.
What was my concern in the courtroom? More or less a matter of getting in and out alive every day. It was quite heated in that courtroom.
Perhaps the star witness for the defense was Carolyn Bryant, although she did not speak before the jury.
Carolyn Bryant testified that Emmett grabbed her hand when she reached for the money.
Mrs. Bryant, will you stand up and put my hands just where he grabbed you?
It was like this.
In other words, he had his left arm on your back and his right arm on your hip.
Yes.
And did he say anything to you then at the time he grabbed you there by the cash register?
He said, "What's the matter, baby? Can't you take it?"
The trial transcript was lost for almost 50 years. The FBI found it during its investigation in 2004. It doesn't contain closing arguments, but press reports at the time described prosecutor Gerald Chatham raising his arms and shouting, quote, "The first words offered in testimony were dripping with the blood of Emmett Till," and defense attorney John Whitten declaring, quote, "Every last Anglo-Saxon one of you men in this jury has the courage to set these men free." Special prosecutor Robert Smith was convinced of Milam and Bryant's guilt.
He knew that they had murdered that young man, Emmett Till. They knew it. The judge knew it. And so my father and Gerald Chatham did everything I think you could have done to prosecute him. They didn't pull any punches.
In the end, the jury deliberated a little more than an hour. One of them later explaining in press reports, if we hadn't stopped to drink pop, it wouldn't have taken that long. But according to Stephen Whitaker, it really wasn't that clear-cut in the jury room. Remember, he interviewed all of the jurors in the early 1960s for his master's thesis.
The jury voted 9-3 to acquit. There were 3 people on the jury that voted guilty.
3 initially voted guilty. Whitaker didn't include that fact in his thesis, and had been assumed the jury was unanimous right away, particularly since they bragged about their pop break delay. In fact, this is the first report of the jury having any real doubt.
Then they voted on the second time, and they voted 11-1. And finally, the third vote was 12-0.
Whitaker identified the last holdout as Bishop Matthews of Charleston. And in his thesis, he expanded on the jurors, saying not a single one doubted that Milam and Bryant had killed Emmett Till.
The three told me later on that they felt very bad about what they had done.
Mamie Till Bradley didn't wait for the verdict.
This is not a verdict we want to hear. She could tell that it was going to be an acquittal.
We heard them announce the verdict, not guilty, on our way back to T.R.M. Howard's house. They took me back to Clarksdale, and I was able to get a taxi to take me to Memphis, where we boarded a plane for Chicago.
I saw the jury as they came in. The foreman took a little dirty strip of paper out of his pocket and read, "We find the defendants not guilty." And I cried to the God of all ages and asked of him, "How long, O God, will we have a double standard of justice? A justice for the white man and a justice for the Negro?"
Less than 2 months after J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant's acquittal, a LaFleur County grand jury heard the case of kidnapping against Milam and Bryant. Mose Wright and Willie Reed returned to Mississippi to testify. LaFleur County Sheriff George Smith testified as well, but it wasn't enough.
The LaFleur County grand jury did not find a true bill in connection with the Emmett Till kidnapping case.
No indictment. 2 months later, in January 1956, Milam and Bryant confessed to killing Emmett Till in an article for Look magazine.
They committed the murder and told me they did and told me how they did.
William Bradford Huey paid $4,000 for their story. In that account, Milam and Bryant said they acted alone. They made no mention of the barn in Drew. Starting 2 days after J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant's acquittal for Emmett Till's murder, T.R.M. Howard began urging J. Edgar Hoover to investigate the case. Ultimately, according to David and Linda Beto's book on T.R.M. Howard, it was Juanita Mitchell with the National Council of Negro Women who got federal action.
There's a tour of FBI headquarters, and she's on the tour, and she keeps pestering him.
She asked Hoover directly about the additional men Willie Reed had mentioned on the truck with Emmett Till the night he was killed.
He writes to one of his assistants in the FBI and says, well, look into this.
That led to a slight review, including looking into a rumor that Levi Too Tight Collins and another man were hidden away to keep them from testifying.
2 of the witnesses were being held in protective custody in Sheriff Strider's jail in Charleston.
According to the 2004 FBI report, prosecutor Robert Smith did search for Collins and the other man at the Charleston jail at the time of the trial. And the report says that search during the trial was basically the scope of the FBI review after the trial. And that ended the FBI involvement at the time. Until 2004. Documentaries in 2003 and 2005 mentioned additional people involved that were still alive. Those details and a review of the case by civil rights legal advocate Alvin Sykes led the FBI to open the case once again. And this time the investigation was much more robust. Part of it involved Emmett Till's body being exhumed to prove that the body buried at Burr Oak Cemetery in Alsop, Illinois, was actually Emmett's.
The DNA testing proved to the state of Mississippi that there was indeed Emmett buried at Burr Oak.
The case also included scores of interviews and an extensive re-examination of the facts. The trial transcript was discovered. A gun believed to be used was identified. The 2004 FBI report never confirmed if the 2 witnesses, including Too Tight Collins, were hidden away somewhere. But Stephen Whitaker did, through his stepfather, N.Z. Trout.
He confirmed it to me when I was, very many times after that.
N.Z. Trout was Sheriff H.C. Strider's deputy in 1955. He said nothing about the hidden witnesses during the trial, but had no problem opening up later.
My stepfather knew they were in jail. They were in jail under assumed names, so they could not testify. And they couldn't be forced to testify or allowed to testify.
The 2004 FBI report also points to greater involvement by Carolyn Bryant. It shows Carolyn Bryant saying, quote, sometime during the night, Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam appeared at the home/store with Emmett Till the night Emmett was kidnapped so that she could identify him. In the report, her response is redacted.
We had gone through all of this, gathered all of the information. The state of Mississippi still came out and said there just wasn't enough information to bring an indictment against Carolyn Bryant.
There was a recommendation that she be indicted, a recommendation by the FBI, but of course the grand jury didn't see that there was enough evidence to connect.
FBI investigators felt the evidence was strong.
The FBI investigated between 2004 and 2006, turned over a massive file to the district attorney in Mississippi. Massive meaning like 8,000 pages of documents that had been put together.
In 2007, Joyce Childs, the district attorney for the Mississippi Delta, sought a charge of manslaughter against Carolyn Bryant in the death of Emmett Till. But a LaFleur County grand jury refused to indict. In 2017, the FBI reviewed the case again, this time after an account of a confession by Carolyn Bryant in a book by Timothy Tyson called The Blood of Emmett Till. According to the FBI, Bryant denied making a confession.
Despite the fact that Timothy Tyson published what he purported was her confession, in the end, the FBI found no evidence, no credible evidence, as they put in their report, to support what was published in Timothy Tyson's book.
The federal investigation into the lynching of Emmett Till was officially over.
Today is a day that we'll never forget. Officially, the Emmett Till case has been closed after 66 years.
This is a family that's waited 66 years to learn who would answer for Emmett, and now we know, nobody.
But Emmett Till's story continues to resonate. In 2022, journalists from the Daily Mail found Carolyn Bryant living in Kentucky with her son. They reported she suffers from cancer and is in hospice care. Earlier that same year, someone leaked an unpublished memoir by Carolyn Bryant. Written in 2008, it's called I Am More Than a Wolf Whistle. In it, Bryant stands by her story and declares, quote, I always felt like a victim as well as Emmett. He paid dearly with the loss of his life. I paid dearly with an altered life.
Did she tell the truth about what happened at the store? In the manuscript, she not only stands by that story, but she expands on it in ways that, to me, suggest that there is no remorse.
You don't have any animosity, ill will, or hate. You can't have that. That's the one thing we don't have toward her, you know.
The warrant discovered by the filmmaker in the LaFleur County Courthouse that same year was never executed in 1955 and could not be executed in 2022.
And while there's no statute of limitations for kidnapping under Mississippi law today, there was a 2-year statute of limitations at the time the warrant was issued.
After more than 200 failed attempts to outlaw lynching, Congress is finally succeeding in taking the long overdue action by passing the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act.
Chicago Congressman Bobby Rush sponsored the legislation.
I could not have named it that meal after a more deserving example of what lynching, the horrors of lynching.
The Senate has now finally addressed one of the most shameful elements of this nation's past by making lynching a federal crime. That it took so long is a stain, a bitter stain, on America.
For the President Biden to sign the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act into law means that, America has made a statement.
There is something that has emerged that we can take some solace in, and that is that the name Emmett Till is going to live on in the context of justice. Every time somebody is brought to justice in the case of a lynching as it's defined in the law, the name Emmett Till will be spoken again.
And ultimately, Emmett Till's story will be kept alive. His life remembered. A legacy.
The verdict was unjust. But because of that verdict, Emmett's still memory and legacy is still alive.
Well, you need to get the truth out there. That's why I try to sow the truth, the real truth, and somebody will believe it.
For him to have died a hero would mean more to me than for him just to have died.
Those sites are important and they are heavy. Here in Chicago, we can learn more about Emmett Till's life and we can celebrate the determination of his mother, who refused to let America turn away from a gross, intolerable injustice. Her bravery and strength in 1955 helped inspire and spark the civil rights movement.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Senate 450, an act to award posthumously the Congressional Gold Medal to Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley.
Anyone might have. Thank you all for coming and for watching it. I know it's heavy, so if anybody has any thoughts or questions, I'd be happy to take any questions. If not, it's okay. You know what? This is one of these, this is going through a lot of heavy material. It's very, very heavy, and we were very intentional with trying to connect today to then, and that's why we called it Then and Now. To remind people, because by the way, the non-contiguous park is going to happen. It's been approved and it will exist, and it'll be part of, if anybody wants to visit all national historic sites, it'll be among those that are offered up. So this country, I think, this was all kind of came about during George Floyd. That's when I first heard that we had done the original documentary in '85, and you could see some of the material was from that time. And there was an openness to review where we had been racially in this country for a few years, and now we're not there anymore. We're going in a different direction. And so I'm just grateful that we were able to get this work done, because I don't think anyone would have stopped me. But I don't believe there would be an openness today to hearing some of this truth. And this is truth. We did extensive research, and others have done extensive research. I'm just one of many. So it's important we don't forget anything in our country. It's important. So even taking the time to watch this, I think is critical. Yes, sir.
I may have missed something. The trial was for murder, I would think.
Yes.
It wasn't for lynching.
Well, lynching, murder.
I know, but
lynching is defined, and it's interesting because throughout lynching doesn't have to be hanging. I think some people believe that that's the circumstance, but it's not. It is a racially motivated or hate motivated killing, mob action. And that's basically how it's defined by the federal government.
And that was what obviously made clear in the trial, but they could not get they couldn't get the jury to accept the evidence.
No, they could not.
Wow.
As we pointed out, as Stephen Whitaker pointed out, the jury was handpicked.
Yeah.
And he knew exactly who was going to be seated. So it really was not a just trial. And that's part of the issue. That's what it was like in 1955.
So was it for historical reasons that the Senate this year passed a law against lynching?
Yes. There had been people who fought for it for over 200 years. And remember, this was in 2022 that it passed. And I think the country at that time was dealing with its history in a authentic way. And the country and Congress was more open to it.
I get it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There have been several attempts over the years.
I can imagine why people vote. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
I was in Mount Bayou one evening, and I talked to a white store owner. Everybody else were black, but a white old store owner. And he said to me, if you guys just had stayed north, we wouldn't have any of this trouble. Now, I always thought that was interesting.
When you were in Mount Bayou, a white Southerner,
a white older store owner,
everybody else was black, and they'd said if you had, he said
if you guys had just stayed north, because I talked to him, and
okay.
He said if you guys had just stayed north, none of this would have happened.
None of this would have happened if you had just stayed north, and people like you had just stayed north, and not messed with it. Yeah. Well, that's what H.C. Strider said too. Everybody went up north and got to know the NAACP and came back down and messed everything up for everybody. Well, it wasn't great for folks. It wasn't great for African Americans in the South at that time. And so that way of life was the one they were fighting to preserve.
So I'm curious. I went to seminary back in 2007, 2008. Anyways, seminary was in Tulsa, and we learned about the Tulsa race riots. And I had never in my life heard about that history. Found out that friends in Tulsa grew up never learning about that history. And it too started with a false accusation, and it all happens. And then I think about the history of the Indian schools and the mass graves that we're finding, and I guess the question is obvious, but it starts with the ability to dehumanize, count somebody as less than, as not human, and then the second violence of erasure and obfuscation and denial and complicity in keeping the secrets. So if you could talk a little bit about, and then there was a quote where somebody said this courageous thing that she did, and she changed history by having the photograph taken and published. But what has it really changed? I mean, we are seeing evidence again of people being demonized and dehumanized and othered, and kidnapped.
Well, what it has done, and I think is critical, it did help galvanize the civil rights movement. It did raise awareness. There's no question about that. At the time, African Americans in the South were fighting for the simple right to vote, to, have access to everything that other Americans had access to. It made a huge difference in bringing people together because they saw this terrible injustice against a 14-year-old boy. And that's always important. It's always important to speak up. And there's a parallel with the George Floyd element too, because what made the Emmett Till story so impactful was the decision that his mother made to show the picture. And what made George Floyd so impactful was the fact that there was a video and it could not be denied. And that's the same thing that we're dealing with. And yes, we are slipping back into a different era, but reminding people of the historical trauma that we've gone through in this country is important, because then people can take that information and say, I'm not going to let this happen again. I'm not going to allow another George Floyd. I'm not going to allow another Emmett Till. Will it happen again? I'll tell you what, it's happening now. It never stopped happening. It never stopped happening. But it's the consciousness that it raises that's so important, in my opinion. Yeah. Yes, sir. I think he's over.
I just would like to hear you talk a little bit about critical race theory, because the suppression of our history is kind of part of what's happening now that makes it more difficult, I think, to address so many of the issues that are brought up in this film.
I'm not an expert on critical race theory, but I think that the attack on critical race theory and diversity and equity and inclusion and all the other things are a way to minimize contribution, forget the history, to try to, it's part of the erasure. The critical race theory is nothing more than studying what's happened. That's all it is. It's been demonized, just like diversity, equity, inclusion has been demonized. And that's calculated. I hope no one believes that this is all real. It's not. It's propaganda. It's calculated. And it fits right into that. It fits right into that. That's what the attack on critical race theory is.
I just wanted to say that I'm super proud of you for going up here, Auntie, and doing your thing.
Thank you, Kayshawn.
I want to say, it's you did a lot, so I just want to say I seen it previously, but like I wasn't gonna miss coming back and seeing you do it in person.
Thank you.
And I also just wanted to say, like, racism is something that is taught, just like something in class, just like religion. You know what I'm saying? Nobody grows up and is just born inherently racist, and I don't think every white person is racist, but in the South, it's historically there, and it's seen, and it's still going on, that there is racist things still going on. People like you that are going to go up there and talk, we appreciate that. And so I just wanted to say that, Auntie.
Thank you. Thank you, Kayshawn. That's my nephew. Thank you. Yeah, it's not just, it's all over, yeah.
In 2010, I had a chance to drive through Selma, and I made a promise to Clarence Smith that whenever I get a chance, I'm going to tell this story. So I will.
Okay.
We were standing there, Karen and I, at the bridge, and Emmett Pettin Bridge.
Edmund Pettus.
This black guy came up to us, kind of limping along, and said, "Can I help you guys?" I said, "No, this is just our time. We're just looking at this." He said, "You want to hear my story?" I said, "Sure." And it turned out that Clarence Smith and Leroy Moten were in the car with Viola Liuzzu, who was driving back and forth between Bellingham, and so they got into Selma and said, "Shall we go do another turn?" And Clarence said, "No, I'm just too tired. I'm going to go to bed." But then Leroy Moten and Viola drove back, and they drove out of Selma, and of course they blew her away. And as Clarence said, Leroy Moten played possum. That's why he got by. So I told my story. Thanks, Clarence.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. There's a lot of heroes in this era, the civil rights era, for sure.
Hi, I just was wondering along those educational lines, is there any plan to show this film in schools, in high schools, or anywhere?
Yes, Christopher Benson, who you heard from here, has a whole curriculum that they have worked on, and he has used this as part of an educational tool, which I'm very grateful for. He's among many. He wrote the book with Mamie Till. He's among many people who are scholars in this area of studying Emmett Till and the history. And that's one of the reasons why, because she's a teacher and he worked with her. He worked on creating a curriculum, and this is part of that. Yeah.
Two questions. Do the two men who admitted to the murder have any kind of repercussions over their lives, is number one. And then would you address what the process was and the cost of taking this from an idea to get this documentary, to getting approval, to getting funding? How long did that take? What did it cost? That sort of thing. Because I have another issue that I'm interested in pitching.
Oh, okay. Good for you. Keep it going. The two men, they didn't have any legal repercussions. There were, according to Christopher Benson, who did a lot of extensive research, he basically said that they were more shunned after they admitted to what they'd done. There was a little shame there. So they had difficulty in their lives. And Milam died first within about 6 or so years. I don't have the exact date. He died first. And then Bryant actually lived quite a while. And in 1985, our reporter actually approached him. He was still alive. And he was running a small store. And his wife had left him and didn't apparently have a very happy life. So maybe there was a little justice in there from the universe. I don't think either one of them had a glowing life after that. In fact, Mamie Till talked about that. She said, she didn't have any ill feeling toward them. She was an amazing woman. I didn't ever interview her, but having heard everything from Christopher Benson, she just was determined that people knew what happened to her son. And she felt sorry. She said, how can, you have to live with that. And she did never talk to him, but that was what she said publicly. It was like, I just feel sorry for him, because how do you live with yourself, having done that? As far as the production and the process, fortunately I work for a network, and so I pitched it originally, let's look at this, let's look back at this is great. I had a very supportive boss, and he was all for it. So we did the first part, the trial reenactment. After I found that we had the transcript, I wanted to use elements from the transcript, but the only way to do that, and I felt was a way people would actually take in, was to reenact it. So we worked with a theater company to do that. That cost a bit of money, because that took a whole day to film and put the set together and all of that. So that took a while. And then the third part, really, we already had a lot of material, and then I went back down to Mississippi, and I tried to be economical and not spend too much money. I don't have a figure, but it took, I started working on it in 2000, the part one, and then we finished this one in 2003. So they came out in 3 different parts. So we took quite a while. I'm sure it was, I think it was well worth the money, and I tried to be frugal, and everyone was on board and supported it. So I have to put a hats off to my colleagues and my bosses for giving me the go-ahead. I didn't get any pushback at all. So that was good. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, there's one back there.
I had an experience recently talking to this woman who had moved to Alabama, and then she acted like she was kind of sad she had to move back here, and I said, how could you want to stay in Alabama? And she said, there is no racism in Alabama. And honestly said it, like I was shocked.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, there's racism everywhere in America. It's not just exclusive to the South. In fact, I have to say, I think that's true too. I have to say that I spent a lot of time in the South. I went to college in the South. I worked in Florida. I worked in Mississippi. And there are amazing people. My dad's from Tennessee. My partner's from Tennessee. There are wonderful people in the South, black and white. I really, really enjoyed it. Sometimes the subtlety of racism in the North is even more difficult. You know, one of my issues growing up in Portland, it was predominantly white when I was growing up. I was there in the 80s. And I remember feeling invisible. Like I went to Grant High School in Portland, Oregon, we had quite a few black folks there. Not a lot, but getting out of Northeast Portland, where most of the black people in the state of Oregon lived, I would go places and I was just ignored. No one made eye contact. No one talked to me. My sister had the same experience. I hope you don't mind speaking, for you, but we couldn't wait to leave. I went to a predominantly black college. Spelman College is an all-women's black college in Atlanta, Georgia, and had the best time. And a big part of that was because for the first time I was feeling proud of my heritage. I mean, my father didn't raise me not to be proud, but the society around my mom and my dad, they both raised us to be proud of who we are, but they weren't with me every day, and they didn't see my day-to-day life. And I didn't know until I went to school with a lot of African Americans, and I was like, wow, this is fantastic. It was a life-changing experience, mostly because it helped me feel good about myself as a black person, because that is not the experience I had here in the state of Oregon, in the city of Portland. So the subtle racism can sometimes be just as difficult. I don't know about that. I don't know if I should say that, because people who have had to deal with racial violence in other parts of the country, which I did not experience here, that's awful. That's the worst. So I can't say it was as bad as being in places where you couldn't vote and you had to look down, and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah. But it wasn't great. I think we have to look at ourselves. It wasn't great growing up here in Oregon. And I love Oregon. I love it here. I love Yachats.
Sorry, just had a question on a practical basis. I mean, this is a room of allies.
Yeah.
Hello. Oh, there we go. When we run into stuff, because when you see it, you try to say something or tell someone, don't be a terrible person. You do what you can socially when you run into the racism stuff. But what, in your experience, has been the most effective actions? Someone who is sympathetic, who is allied, who's aware of the history, who's watching out for the people around them to the best they can fumble, because this is not our life. This is kind of a parallel world.
Yeah.
What has been effective, and what can we do?
Speaking up. You guys, and look, I know my mom tells me you guys still have your Black Lives Matter protests out there, that stuff, all of that stuff. Getting together and contacting your legislators if you're not happy with what you see going on, including, in the federal government. Becoming active and standing up for when you see something's wrong. All of that is impactful. You guys are great here. There's no question. My parents chose this town because they felt it instantly. And my I don't know if you guys know this, but my mom and dad are in an interracial relationship. Shocking. When I was born, the loving decision hadn't happened yet. The loving decision, I think, was 68. So they were just shy of getting married in 73 of being illegally married. Okay, because I think it was 68. The loving decision happened, which outlawed laws that said you couldn't marry someone of another race. And they felt instantly that this was a place of belonging. And we felt it too and loved this place. Yachats is so special. And it's because of all of you, because you filled this room. Because you are allies. There's no question about it. And just keep on keeping on and keep on fighting. I think you guys are doing great. You're right. The audience, you guys are going to be the messengers. You're the audience that's the messengers, because I know you guys are all where your hearts are. And I do appreciate that. That is not lost on anybody. Right, Daddy? Would you like to say anything, Daddy? Dad.
I do love it here in Yachats and with my wife, who is a Canadian. But I will say, as we were talking about some of the things, I spent the night in jail for the only time in my life in 1965 for having supposedly misspoken to a white woman in Bells, Tennessee. I went to Tennessee State, maybe you know, in Nashville. I was out in the summer. I had been drafted, but I wasn't gone in. So I was living in my aunt's house, working during the summer. And the sheriff arrived and said, "Are you Sam Brooks?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Get in the car." And he put a gun on me. And it was not much when the sheriff puts a gun on that you could do except do it. I got in the car. He took me out to Alamo, Tennessee, and jail with bars, clinked in the jail. I wasn't too worried about it because I was leaving for the Navy the next day. And I knew that I would be leaving. But there was something strange that happened. The next morning, I tell this because you never know how things are going to go in life. This woman, I knew nothing about what they were talking about, period, came out to the jail, and she came back and said, he's not the guy. I don't know what that's supposed to give me solace that I wasn't the guy that did something that I didn't do. And why should it be an issue anyway? But I left the next morning, going down to Memphis, headed to Great Lakes, Illinois for the Navy. So I look at all those things. I spent time in the Navy, going to electronic school. Then after that went to 3 tours of duty in Vietnam. And I came to Oregon in 1968 for 3.5 months, went to work for Tektronix, probably knew Tektronix. We came back permanently, flew from Japan to here in 1969. And this has been, as you can see, I've been in Yachats for 28 years. It's fabulous. Some people have come and said this is the best place. I think it was a person from Paris that said this was the best place in the world. I would not disagree with that. But as you know, my house is on King Street. I try my best to make it an example of what a good community is. So we were, as my daughters are both college graduates. My grandson is here. My great-grandson, the little guy. And so it's been a great place. So you should always promote Yachats, and what we do here. And more people should do it. Oh, we don't forget my granddaughter, who lives in Salt Lake City and is a graduate of college there. So it's been a great place for us to grow, our children to grow, our grandchildren to grow, and now our great-grandson. So Marion's back.
Thank you, Daddy. Well, with that, I think, oh, yes, sir, yeah.
It's not a question. It's, first of all, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I did not mean to diminish the effect of that photo and the changes that it did make, but I still wonder, we have so much further to go. But to the end of Yachats being a great place and you guys being awesome, on Friday the 22nd, the church here in the Commons is sponsoring a night, a sing-along, Sing for Justice, Songs of Resistance and Resilience. It'll be from 6 to 8 p.m. It's $20. It is a fundraiser, but you are all invited. We've got several local musicians, all the old folk songs that you all grew up singing. The words will be projected on the screen. We'll have beer and wine, so come on out and support.
Sounds great. Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.